What's going on, everybody? Doug here, one of the hosts, producers, and creators of the Genre of Your Life podcast, here with a very special review roundup episode for you guys this week. Kicking off the holiday movie season, of course. Next week and this week, no full episode of the podcast, but hope to have a full episode of the podcast for you guys week of Thanksgiving. And then next week, look out for my full review of Smile 2 and Honora. I'll have a newsletter for you guys next week / review roundup episode. Look out for that. But this week, my friends, I have my full review of Red 1, starring The Rock, J.K. Simmons, Chris Evans, Lucy Liu, a one that's been not getting good reviews. But guess what, guys? You might be surprised with my review of this film, so stay tuned for that. And of course, my friends, you can find the full show, of course, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Amazon Podcasts, and of course, we have a full audio show on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Midway Avenue Productions. Whether you're on Spotify, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or YouTube, please rate, review, share the word about us with your friends and family, fellow podcast fans, fellow movie fans. Your feedback means the world to us. And of course, we're Apple Podcast fans. Please don't forget, we got to hit that 200 ratings on Apple Podcasts as soon as possible. That will help us out so much with more press coverage, more opportunities for us for the podcast and more interviews, stuff like that. So please, we love all you guys, whether on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, and of course, YouTube Music. But we're Apple Podcast fans. Help us. 200 ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts. That will help us go so far in the podcast world and review world and critic world. So thank you all so much for the ongoing support. It truly means the world to us. Like I said, next year, 2025, guys, it's a good year for us. I'm telling you, we have our South by Southwest coming up in March, and then CinemaCon hopefully in April. And of course, the big one is San Diego Comic-Con in July. Look out for that. So thank you all for the support. It's going on 2 years. I want to say this week we've done the podcast, which is crazy. 2 years ago, I had this little idea about this podcast and how far it can go. But man, the support of you all, the amazing work of Nick, Moses, and Joel. It's hard to believe that it's been 2 years, but the show is so special to me and to all of us. Like, we've gone through a lot, ups and downs, a lot of kind of like figuring out good audio, good quality, good reactions, good video stuff. And we're growing. We're still growing 2 years later, which is hard to believe. But you know what? Along the way, we've got some amazing support from all of you fans who are friends at Frost and Movies More Fun. It's again, we have a lot going on still, which is hard to believe, which is kind of, again, crazy to believe that 2 years ago we started this podcast when we had really no good audio. We were doing it on Twitch at the time. Our first review, our first reaction, our first comment was, man, your audio sucks. And 2 years later, hopefully our audio sounds a lot better. So again, you're the judge. Tell us. Let's know in the comments, review section of the podcast app. So, but seriously, guys, thank you so much for kind of like sticking with us. And if the show wasn't for you, thank you for listening in the first place. It means a lot to us. Again, all press is good press. So thank you all for kind of sticking with us, and hope you're still enjoying the show. Like I said, we have a lot more in store for you all 2025, and I'm hope to have the full video element of the podcast for you guys soon. Look out for that. But thank you guys so much for the ongoing support. It truly means the world to us. Alrighty, my friends, this is going to be probably a quick episode of the podcast tonight, and I have my review of Red 1. You're thinking, Red 1, what could that be? And Red 1, no, it's not Red Notice. That was with The Rock, Ryan Reynolds, and Gal Gadot, of course. It's with The Rock, different franchise, different universe. And Red 1 is kicking off the holiday season in the movies, of course, with a big budget action Christmas movie from Amazon MGM. Red 1 follows the story of after Santa Claus, codename Red 1, is kidnapped, the North Pole's head of security, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, must team up with the world's most infamous bounty hunter, Chris Evans, in a globe-trotting, action-packed mission to save Christmas. But didn't he team up with someone in Red Notice? Yes, he did. And that was Ryan Reynolds. Different franchise, guys. I'm telling you for sure. As someone who loves The Rock and loves Ryan Reynolds and loves Chris Evans, it's a different movie, I promise you. I will be honest. Nick can back me up on this. The trailers for this movie, for Red 1, did not sell me at all. And I said, oh no. Rock, Chris Evans, Amazon, guys, what are we doing here? J.K. Simmons, what's going on here? And I'll be honest. Red Notice, I did not care for really at all. Listen, I love The Rock. I love Ryan Reynolds. I love Gal Gadot. And the whole time watching Red Notice, I said, is this for real? This is not the good movie. And I finished it. I think I watched it in parts. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. Come on, guys. This can't be it. And the director of that made Dodgeball, Central Intelligence movies I absolutely love. We're the Millers I absolutely love. And I said, this can't be the real movie, right? No, it was. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. And as someone who really loves like a lot of what The Rock does and what Gal Gadot does and what Ryan Reynolds does especially, I was like, this is really the movie that y'all been hyping out for a couple of years now for Netflix. And it's a good thing it's a Netflix movie because if I paid to see this in theaters, I probably would have been pissed. And I was like, oh, guys, come on now. And The Rock, I'm trying to think his last movie that he was in, other than his little cameo in Fast 10, I'm pretty sure it was, Black Adam, a movie that me and Nick liked. I know Nick loved. I liked it a lot, but I didn't love it. And I'm looking back at his IMDb. Yeah, his last film he did was Black Adam. And I think Black Adam also had a bad bad rap because it was delayed. There were so many different changes at Warner WB at the time. And I think the weekend came out was the weekend when WB announced, hey guys, guess what? James Gunn and Peter Safran are the new heads of DC. Everything else is bye-bye. You're like, wait, but I watched recent movies with all these actors in DC still doing movies. Then we also had, at the time, it was 2022, so we still had The Flash on the pipeline, Aquaman, something else I'm forgetting too. Flash, Aquaman. No, that was it. So I was wrong. So we still, at the time, so I think Black Adam got caught up in this thing of like, okay, this movie's been pushed back so many times, delayed, COVID, delayed, new change of different heads of the studio, and then as soon as when James Gunn and Peter Safran got involved, they were like, yeah, everything that you think you know about DC, goodbye. So I think I had a misfortune of like it was bad timing for this release of this movie, unfortunately, but I still enjoyed it. I think people were a little kind of harsh on it. It didn't make a lot of money, unfortunately. It was a bit of a flop. But again, I know Nick loved it. So again, I also own it on 4K. Definitely worth the rewatch for sure. But it was a very weird timing for this movie, I would say. So I think The Rock's really last movie he was in before that was Red Notice. So it's been a while. Like I said, guys, the trailers of this movie did not sell me at all. And I was like, this can't be for real. This is a real movie. And sure enough, it was. And then you hear reports of like, the budget, this is crazy, $250 million. What are they spending on? And I'm like, well, the Rock, to his credit, carries a big price tag. Chris Evans, former Captain America, a big price tag. I would assume J.K. Simmons, Oscar winner, price tag. Lucy Liu, legacy actress, one of the biggest legacy names in Hollywood, probably a nice price tag. And it's a big studio film via Amazon MGM. It's a big high concept Christmas Santa IP, not IP, but like he's a mythological figure, of course. So it's like it's a lot of money on this franchise. It's IP at least. And again, I saw more of the trailers, I saw more of the ads, and I said, oh man, guys, this can't be a real movie. This can't be serious. So me and Nick kind of were joking about it a lot during the podcast. We're like, this really can't be the real movie. Unfortunately, Nick was sick this past week, so he couldn't hop on the screen this week. So I brought my brother Fletcher, who was filling in for Nick that week. And I had really low to like no standards or expectations of the movie whatsoever. I gotta say, guys, I had a good time. I would be lying to you if I said like the movie fucking sucks, the movie's terrible. I had fun with it. And I was hearing all these early reactions, early reviews from critics and audiences were like, this is very weird, this is not a good movie, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, don't please prove me wrong. I gotta say, again, I had a good time. It's a very weird concept. After seeing it on Tuesday, I thought of like how I could compare this movie. And to me, it was a mix of the Santa Claus, Scrooged, Fast and Furious, and the Adjustment Bureau. Very 4 different films, obviously. And each time I'm like, no, I see the Adjustment Bureau in this. I see Fast and Furious in this. I see the Santa Claus. I see Scrooge in this. And, I see a lot of different genres in this movie. And again, someone who loves like genre hybrid, genre crossing kind of movies, I gotta say, I give them props for what they did with kind of like genre crossing, genre hybrid movies. Because again, you see a lot of Fast and Furious, you see a lot of Santa Claus, you see a lot of Justin Bieber, you see a lot of Scrooge in this. Each time you're like, yeah, I can see what they're going for in this. But again, hearing the reviews from other reactions, other critics, I was like, am I walking into a shit show? Like this can't be good. And the whole time I was like, man, I'm having a good time with it. I was laughing, I was chuckling. I thought this movie had a good job of kind of embracing the holiday spirit. And The Rock plays head of security for Santa. And what's his name? I think his name is like Callum Drift. Yeah, Callum Drift is like the head of security for Santa. And they refer to Santa, of course, legendary J.K. Simmons as Nick, as Red One, and Bonnie Hunt plays Mrs. Claus. And again, it's a very, very well cast. I'll be honest, it's very like interesting. Okay, for sure. Who's gonna be in this movie? Who's gonna kind of play this person? Whatever plays kind of like Santa's acquaintance or whatever. And again, like I said, The Rock, Chris Evans, Lucy Liu, J.K. Simmons, Bonnie Hunt. It's a very, very well stacked cast. And I'll be honest too, I really have not seen a movie of Chris Evans I've enjoyed. No, that's incorrect. I did like him a lot in Knives Out, but to be fair, Knives Out also had Ryan Johnson behind it and an amazing ensemble cast. So I can't really say like, oh, like Chris Evans was like really good in that movie. He was, but wasn't a lead in the movie. He's kind of an ensemble piece. I'll be honest, I haven't seen really a good Chris Evans led film since maybe Captain America or Avengers. I thought Ghosted was atrocious. I said, "Oh no, this can't be a really like good movie." And sure enough, it wasn't. And again, I adore Chris Evans. And I love Ana de Armas, one of my Hollywood crushes for sure. But I was like, yeah, this doesn't seem like the movie y'all want to be promoting. And I'm trying to think, what has he done post Captain America? Knives Out, of course, yeah. Oh, you know what? Not true. He was very good in Defending Jacob, and that show was very underrated. However, The Gray Man, and you'll know me by this point now. I love Ryan Gosling. One of my favorite actors in the world. I have a huge crush on him. The Gray Man to me was a bit disappointing because I'm like, man, you got Chris Evans, Ryan Gosling, Ana de Armas, the Russo brothers, who I, again, thought they did an amazing job with Avengers and Captain America. And The Gray Man to me was kind of like, all right, it was cool. Like, I wanted to be like wowed by it. I was like, oh man, like Russo's, Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, like this is going to be my shit. Nah, it was fine. And it was like, hey, it was cool. Anything special? Not really. I heard Pain Hustlers was terrible. Haven't watched it yet. I still have not watched Scott Pilgrim, the animated series on Netflix, on my list. So I'm like, man, I really don't think that like post Avengers, post Captain America, Chris Evans had the best kind of luck. I think like Mark Ruffalo had a better kind of post Avengers. I think Downey Jr. obviously won the Oscar for Oppenheimer, had a better kind of post career, post Avengers. But I haven't seen Chris Evans really in a movie that like, oh man, like popped the way like his co-stars did. But I gotta say, the chemistry between The Rock and Chris Evans worked in this movie very well. I'll even say I think it works better than the chemistry between Ryan Gosling and The Rock and Red Notice. Because again, as someone who I do think, again, I'm probably more of a fan of Ryan Reynolds than Chris Evans, I was like, oh man, The Rock and Ryan Reynolds, what can go wrong? Well, a lot of things can go wrong. And I just didn't believe their chemistry. It felt very stiff. It felt very weird where I was like, okay, The Rock's playing The Rock and Ryan, you're playing Deadpool in a non-Deadpool role. What's going on here? And I was like, oh man, this is not working. And I think the best out of all three of them was Gal Gadot, because Gal Gadot was actually trying to kind of like play something else, not playing Wonder Woman, playing this kind of like villain, whatever. I give her props for that. But when I was watching Red Notice, I was like, okay, I'm seeing The Rock from Fast and Furious. I'm seeing Ryan Reynolds from Deadpool. Guys, change it up, please, love of God. Like, come on now. Like, what are we doing here? But I think in this movie, Red One, I really did like the chemistry between Chris Evans and The Rock a lot, where I'm like, oh, this is the kind of a bromance. They're very fun together. It works well. And part of me, though, felt like this movie was written for Ryan Reynolds, where I was like, oh, man, like, I bet you The Rock had a good time with Ryan Reynolds on Red Notice. We're going to do a movie called Red One. Get Ryan. I get you. Ryan was probably busy with Deadpool or whatever. His amazing, 1,000 amazing companies he's a part of, whether it's Mint Mobile or Aviation or Wrexham. But some of the dialogue, some of the script was like, oh, I felt like this character was like designed or like archetype or had a architecture around Ryan Reynolds, because some of the chemistry, some of like the dialogue and lines and kind of like the mannerisms, like, oh, I'm pretty sure this was made of Ryan Reynolds. I could be wrong, but I still think though, like this chemistry was way better than the chemistry in Red Notice. Um, I really haven't seen a Christmas movie in theaters in quite a while. I want to say the last one I watched and enjoyed in theaters was, again, off topic, but I really do like Office Christmas Party in 2016. People hated that movie. I had a great time with that movie, one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time. So I'm like, it's been a while. And I do think, so I said this in my reaction on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. I think this was originally a Amazon Prime Video movie for streaming. I'll be honest. I think this movie should have stayed an Amazon Prime streaming movie. I'll perfectly frank. This movie had a lot of things where I was like, do you have these? Honestly, like, it's a film like this. Is it worth seeing in theaters? Not really. I'll be honest. I think it's a fine movie to watch at home with your family on the big screen at your home. I can't say a lot of things where I was like, oh man, you gotta see the movie in theaters, like I gotta see this movie with a crowd or whatever, because it really did feel like a good film for Amazon Prime to watch during Thanksgiving, during Christmas. With that said though, I do appreciate Amazon MGM putting out an original big budget film like this for the big screen, for theatrical. I know The Rock kind of goes back and forth between theatrical and streaming, but if you hear an interview with him, he's very pro theatrical, which I really admire about the guy a lot. I mean, again, I admire The Rock about a lot of things: his work ethic, his personality, his love to fans and audiences. But I do think this film probably would have worked better as a streaming film on Amazon Prime. And I wonder why Amazon kind of made the switch of like what made them go, hey, what's what? We're putting this in theaters with a big crowd, IMAX release, whatever, and a lot, a couple thousand screens. And I do want, I hope to see kind of wonder why, because I know unfortunately this film wasn't tracking good opening weekend. And I do think that it was 250 mil budget before marketing distribution. That's a lot for an original Christmas movie. But like I said, probably because of budgets or salaries for The Rock, Chris Evans, J.K. Simmons, Lucy Liu, Bonnie Hunt. I get that part of it. But I feel like this movie could have been 100 mil, 150 mil tops. But for it to be 250 mil, that's a lot for a Christmas action movie for the big screen. But we'll see how it does this weekend. Maybe word of mouth is better than critics, whatever. Another thing I noticed in this movie too is that this movie could have used a lot more J.K. Simmons and Bonnie Hunt. Growing up, Bonnie Hunt, I love watching her. Obviously, Cheer by the Dozen. She was the voice of Sally in Cars. And even J.K. Simmons, who I've grown up watching since Spider-Man in 2001, 2002. I really do think that they market him a lot. Keeping this non-spoiler, the movie could have used a lot more of him and Bonnie Hunt, where I was like, oh man, because like seeing them on screen together like really worked, and their chemistry worked a lot, where I was like, oh, this is cute. Again, very good chemistry, amazing actors, obviously, but I really kind of do think that like there was more to their characters, more of their development than what we got, and I was like, oh man, if we could use maybe more of them, where I was like, maybe we could see more of them, maybe like more of this situation, this character arc, whatever, man, it could work better. But I do think that like there could have been a lot more of J.K. Simmons and Bonnie Hunt. I think the trailers kind of are misleading a bit with J.K. Simmons' involvement. But again, I still think everyone was casted very well, whether it's from, again, the Rock playing his head of security. Chris Evans kind of plays this kind of like hacker, like bounty hunter to a degree, more of like kind of like an IT like bounty hunter hacker kind of guy. And Lucy Liu kind of plays like the head director of like the kind of like the fantasy elements of like the Rock, Santa and like the Rock, Santa and like Easter Bunny, those kind of like fantasy creatures that people are like, oh, they're not real, but she's kind of in charge of them. And of course, Bonnie Hunt played Mrs. Claus, and I really did like kind of like who was casted for who. Again, it's a fun movie. I did think the crowd that we were in was laughing a lot. Like the audience was loving it a lot. It's a little over 2 hours, and you definitely feel the runtime, I would say. I think maybe like towards the middle where I was like, we got a lot of time left. And towards the end, you're like, is this ending or we see a lot of more time left? No, we see a lot more time left. And I do think like the first half hour was like, okay, this is fun. It's kind of quick movie, kind of quick pace. I'm with this. But it kind of overstays its welcome with a little over 2 hour runtime. And again, I'm very big now on like pacing in movies and runtime in movies where I was like, okay, this could have been better with this runtime or shorter runtime or longer runtime. And I have no problem, calling out any movie that's like, oh, okay, sure, whatever. This movie had a long runtime, and you definitely feel a drag in the second and third act. You're like, oh, okay. And one thing that I definitely agree with other critics was that the CGI for this movie looks kind of atrocious. I wouldn't say atrocious, but it was questionable. And there was times I'm like, this movie is 260 mil, 250 mil, and the CGI looks like this. It could have looked a bit better. And this is more of a nitpick thing, of course. Obviously, CGI and VFX artists are really hardworking people and make up a lot of the industry, as we know. But there's a lot of times where I was like, the CGI on this is a little questionable. This looks like that for this budget. I don't know about that. But I do think this movie is very well crafted and very suited for families. Families love seeing movies together during Christmas or Thanksgiving. I wonder what the release is going to be like this for Amazon Prime Video. I wonder, because I remember Saltburn last year was like around this time and it was on Prime around like Christmas. I don't know it's going to be the same thing. I will probably say it's probably depending on performance of this movie. I will say if it does modestly well, probably be on longer. If it does not so good to decent, it might be on Prime Video maybe around Christmas or like Christmas week at least. But I'm very curious how this does, box office wise. But again, good for the family, good for family, all ages, kids, adults, teens, pre-tweens, grandparents, whatever. Because again, I think we don't see a lot of these movies like this on the big screen, quote unquote, holiday themed anymore. I think most of these films are going on Netflix or Hulu or Prime. And rightfully so. I think there's a market for everything nowadays. And I think the market for streaming for like Netflix or Prime or Hulu has a big audience like for this on streaming services. But again, I gotta give them props for taking the risk and doing a film like this with this budget for the holidays on the big screen. Is it worth seeing in IMAX? No. And as someone who's the biggest IMAX fanboy you'll ever meet, and heard me praise IMAX over and over and over again on this podcast, I always say, if a movie is filmed for IMAX or filmed with IMAX, 100% go see an IMAX. Example like Top Gun Maverick, or No Way Home was filmed for IMAX, not filmed with IMAX, meaning that it was the 190, which is kind of like the frame below, filmed for IMAX, filmed with IMAX is like Oppenheimer and Nope and Doom Part 2 and Joker 2. Those are filmed with IMAX, legit IMAX cameras, 143. Filmed for is like 190 with like the aspect ratio, like No Way Home or Top Gun Maverick. I think even recent Alien Romulus was that way. Avengers Endgame, Infinity War were filmed for IMAX with 190. This was kind of just like the typical film ratio. So if you're gonna see this movie, I would not spend the extra money on Dolby or IMAX. It's fine with the regular showing, if you ask me, because when we watched it, I was like, I wonder why this is not IMAX, and the aspect ratio did not change whatsoever. So save your money, seeing a normal showing of a theater. Another thing too I noticed is that this movie, the score is really good. It's it definitely captures the holiday magic a lot, which I appreciate. Like I said, I'm trying to think the last really big like family Christmas movie. I'm trying to think. I'm blanking. Like I know those films that have like holiday, like Christmas, like infused in it, but like what's the big like made for holidays, whatever. And I'm trying to think, and I'm blanking on one. Jake Kasdan did this movie. Jake Kasdan did the last two Jumanji movies, which I was a huge fan of. I love Welcome to the Jungle. I love that film so much. Next Level was Jumanji 3. It was fun. It was cute. But that Welcome to the Jungle was a surprise where I was like, this is funny and very heartfelt. And like this movie too, like Red One, there's a lot of heartfelt moments, a lot of very kind of cute emotional moments. I think it very, tugs on the heartstring for sure. But there was certain moments where I was like, this feels kind of forced. Like there's a scene with Chris Evans' character and his son that was like, okay, I liked how they kind of like set this up, but it feels a bit forced right now. What what's going on with this? How will this kind of like unfold? And it kind of felt like a half bad, kind of like oh, kind of not half, not like a last minute thing, but it was kind of like okay, like what did really did like what was the kind of like purpose behind this like storyline or this arc. But I think it definitely worked at the end more than at the front, because I was like, oh, why is he a dad? And because again, the actor playing his son and him had no chemistry, but it kind of worked better towards the end from the whole holiday spirit, the holiday element, the holiday message, obviously. um Again, it had a lot of elements that remind me of like Tim Allen Santa Claus, where I was like, oh yeah, like this reminded me a lot of the North Pole of this. And his creatures and his friends like that. Like, oh, this is kind of funny. And unlike Tim Allen Santa Claus, in this movie, Santa Claus is buff and going to the gym with The Rock. So he has a good trainer, he's a good squatter, and he's very well built in this movie compared to the Tim Allen, more kind of like the jolly, bigger, kind of like chubbier Santa Claus. Where this one is like, hey, listen, I'm ready to beat some ass, no matter what. I'm ready to fight. I like that for sure. And I will say, though, the villain of this did not really kind of work for me. I think the villain itself was like interesting, but the actors kind of seem miscast. The actress is Kiernan Shipka, who was in Twister. She was in Long Legs. She also was in Totally Killer. And I was like, I didn't really feel like intimidated by here, or like kind of like, oh my gosh, like what you gonna do to Santa Claus? What you gonna do to like The Rock? I never felt that way whatsoever. Towards the end, when they kind of like reveal like a villain's kind of like superpowers, where I was like, oh, okay, for sure, that makes sense. But I didn't really feel like she felt menacing. It kind of felt like, hey, who's like available at this time to be this villain? Okay, her, sure, let's put her in. And I was like, oh, I do think that a movie is only as good as its villain. Heath Ledger, Dark Knight, Killmonger, Michael B. Jordan, Josh Brolin, Thanos. And I kind of felt that a little bit with recently. No, Paul Dano as the Riddler, obviously. And I do think that like, and I think of like Training Day. You got Dwayne Johnson. You got Denzel Washington. And you got Ethan Hawke. You got to have really a good villain with a good protagonist. And I think The Rock has not had a really good like antagonist maybe since Fast Five, I want to say. Even like Hobbs and Shaw, where I was like, oh, okay. I do think The Rock has a good like heroic kind of like protagonist, kind of like like stance, kind of like feeling towards him. But at the same time, I don't think he hasn't really had a good like protagonist to antagonist kind of like ratio. And I'm trying to think. I think the last one was like Reyes in Fast Five. Yeah, I'm looking back right now. Black Adam to me was kind of like, okay, this is the villain. He's an anti-hero, I guess. I'm not sure. But I do think every good hero needs a good antagonist, and the antagonist is kind of feel kind of weak in terms of the actor and the performance. But when they kind of reveal like towards the end of like who this person is, like okay, that works for sure. But I do think The Rock definitely needs a better antagonist for his movies going forward. And again, that's a lot of actors I've seen, a lot of movies I've seen where I'm like, ooh, the actor needs a good villain in this. I even said it in Deadpool Wolverine. Emma Corrin, phenomenal actor. They were really good in that. However, I don't think the character of Casanova was like menacing enough where I was like, this is kind of like a throwaway, kind of like one-off villain. And I felt the same way in this Red One, where I was like, the villain doesn't seem like menacing or kind of like, oh no, what's going to happen? I don't feel like the threat. Again, probably could have been a performance thing or the actor they chose to play this villain. But with that said, though, it's still a fun time at the movies. I'm not gonna lie about that. I was laughing aloud multiple times. My brother Fletcher, he loved it. He loved it Christmas. So again, if you love like Christmas movies, love being in the spirit, I think this film definitely does a job of kind of like getting you in the holiday spirit for the movie for the movies, and of course the holiday season, of course. I do think this movie is getting a little too much hate online with the reaction, the reviews, obviously. But again, end of the day, I still think this movie probably would have been a better hit on streaming for sure. And I think Chris Evans, I just still think his post-Avengers career hasn't been all that great. And this to me seems kind of more like a paycheck, or it was like, oh yeah, Ryan dropped out. Chris, come on in, man. Do your thing, man. Do your thing. Like, this is it for you. But like I said, I do think the chemistry worked better between the two of them than The Rock and Ryan Reynolds and Red Notice. But again, I can't rave about this movie, but I had a lot of fun. There's a lot of Fast and Furious elements, definitely for sure. Like I said, I grew up watching stuff like Home Alone and Scrooged, and even films that weren't that great, like Christmas with the Cranks and Christmas. Good, the best movie, still a lot of fun. I think of like National Lampoon, Christmas Vacation. So I think to people maybe that were like maybe in their pre-tweens or like early age are gonna love this movie because this movie's so much fun. It's cool. It's badass. So I think that there's definitely a generation or demographic for this film that's gonna be like loving this film or like, oh man, this is gonna be so much fun to watch. I love The Rock. Rock's a big name now. He's a big social media presence. Like, what's he gonna do? Chris Evans. A lot of kids grew up watching him as Captain America. Like, what can go no wrong? I think for that demographic, that generation is gonna love this and eat this up for sure. But also too, I think, like I said, J.K. Simmons, Bonnie Hunt, Lucy Liu could have used a lot more screen time. Where I was like, oh man, like it would have been cool to see them more interact with The Rock and Chris Evans. Nick Kroll has a funny cameo, I'll be honest with you. That's kind of funny. I was like, Nick Kroll was kind of a troll himself. I'm like, you know what? This kind of worked. It was a small role and it worked. It was like, again, I do think some of the funny lines were definitely in the trailer too, where I'm like, ooh, that would have been a funnier, a better payoff with in the movie. But there was a few things with like how like some kind of like the tech or the equipment they use for Santa's like, security kind of revealed in the trailers. It would have been cooler if it was used like waited for the full movie. More of a nitpick for sure. But again, it is a cute movie. Good for the family. Good for the holidays. Again, we'll see how it does. But if you love if you're looking for a Christmas movie to watch in theaters with a family, either Thanksgiving or Christmas, I would say Red One's definitely the movie to watch for the family. I'm trying to think. Not a lot of Christmas films are coming out. Other than that Christmas pageant one that came out last week, I'm hearing actually pretty good things about. But again, good with the family, all ages, kids, tweens, preteens, teens, adults, grandparents. I'm giving this a solid 6 out of 10. I think it's a really fair. Again, I laughed a lot. I had a good time with it. I was definitely captured by the charm. Again, the movie definitely has like the holiday magic for sure that you watch. Like, oh yeah, this has the magic for sure. Like it's capturing the essence and charm of like holiday and Christmas, of course. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a solid 6 out of 10. Would I go crazy about it? No. Would I see it again? Probably not. Not in theaters. Probably watch it at home or on streaming. But I do think it's getting a little too harshly reviewed online by the critics and reviewers. So again, think what you will. But I hope you guys definitely check it out for yourself. If you are a sucker or big fans of holiday movies like this for the big screen, again, it's a very genre crossing hybrid kind of film. Like I said, it's definitely Santa Claus, Scrooge, Fast and Furious, and Adjustment Bureau for sure. I do want to see The Rock in like not actual movie. That's rude, but no, it can be in the Safdie brother A24 film. I do think The Rock could benefit from doing more kind of like serious roles, kind of like how Batista did with like Dune and Knock at the Cabin, stuff like that. Where I'm like, I want to see him do more kind of like smaller, grounded, dramatic work. Same with Chris Evans too. Hey, Chris Evans, I know both you guys have like amazing talent, amazing range as actors. Do more of the kind of like the lower budget, kind of like indie, more performance, kind of heavy bass stuff like that. And you both have the chops, obviously, as actors and performers. But I do think maybe a smaller or decent sized budget might help you guys go a long way as actors and performers. So that's just me, but we'll see how see how this movie turns out. And again, looking forward to seeing whatever The Rock does next, as well as Chris Evans and Jake Kasdan too. I think Kasdan does a lot of kind of like very similar to like really Zemeckis at times with like kind of like the themes and the stories, stuff like that. So again, I think he's doing Jumanji 3, but like him too. I know he getting more of a comedy background with like I think he did Walk Hard and Bad Teacher. Like I think a few episodes of Freaks and Geeks. But again, I would probably appreciate seeing all three of these guys do more kind of like the lower indie middle tier budget movies. But hey, that's just me. All right, my friends. Hope you guys enjoyed this quick and short review roundup episode for you all this week. Again, we are kicking off the holiday movie season. We're just beginning. We have a lot more to cover this year. Like I said, we have Minora and Smile 2 review. We're seeing Wicked this weekend. A lot more in the pipeline for you guys. And as always, my friends, we'll see you guys at the movies.